Welcome to another episode of Behind the Pixel. I'm your host, Joe. What you're about to hear is the second time I spoke to Sparrow. The first time was 2 months ago, on a Monday night, late, through a Discord voice chat and a terrible connection. She was exhausted and pulled in 1,000 directions, coordinating a CryptoVoxels exhibit for the women of crypto art, the collective she founded. And then here was me, an inexperienced podcaster, trying to interview a woman with more experience in crypto, more wisdom and technical knowledge. Within the first 5 minutes, I quickly realized I could not keep up in the conversation with her, and I felt I was wasting her time as a complete newbie. I'm glad that no one will ever hear that episode. But this time was completely different. It was like talking to an old friend. It was refreshing, calming, and exactly where I wanted to be. And Sparrow was at ease, happy, and taking some time for herself after an exhausting 2 months.
That's most of the problem, right? There's so much coming, and there's so many interesting things, and people doing really interesting things that I've been friends with for the last 2 odd years. I purposefully said no to several things, just so that as projects got completed, I wasn't overloaded. So I've been very selective in what I've been saying yes to, just like in the last month, because I just couldn't add anything more. And even if it was in the distance, I didn't want to overcommit, because there'd be 10 other things that came in that said, so yeah, it's interesting to deal with almost too much opportunity.
How do you decide what to say no to? Because like you said, there's so many interesting things, and I'm starting to get to that point. Like I told you before, that like this is still all relatively brand new to me. I've only been doing this for like 2 months, and I've just gotten to that point where I'm about to like just shut my phone off and not look at things anymore, because it's like, yes, sure, let's talk. Yeah, I'll write something about that. I'll buy this. I'll do this. It's overwhelming, and I just want to take a step back, but I don't want to lose that point of touch with like you and Etta and everyone else I speak to. So I don't know I'm not good at finding a balance. I'm hoping you can give me some insight how to choose what to say yes and no to.
I'm not the poster girl for balance, I don't think. I always bite off too much.
Mm-hmm.
My strategy is to, chew it slowly, and eventually it all gets eaten. How do you eat an elephant? It's just one little bit at a time.
Yeah, right.
And there isn't a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
For doing that, unfortunately. I mean, I know that there's all sorts of systems that people try to employ, like, the Allen stuff with Get It Done, and there's all sorts of systems.
And 1,000 mnemonic devices to memorize them all with. There's a system for each system to remember it.
But at some point, the systems become just another thing to do. And I'm like, but that's just another thing. So,
the writing group that I'm a part of, we all have these, workflow programs and stuff. And I mean, I hope you can relate to this with your experience with technology. The more I feel like I understand technology, the less useful it becomes to me, because it's always someone trying to oversimplify something where a human being interaction is enough for it. Like you and I just sitting here talking is easier than talking through one of these programs.
I have found that when you need something complicated, it is just easier to have a face-to-face conversation or voice chat or something, right? Because that can be done in 10, 15, 20 minutes. Whereas you could spend hours going back and forth in messages trying to accomplish the same thing. So yes, as hard as scheduling may be, finding time for a 15, 20-minute, face-to-face conversation or real-time conversation, I guess is probably the best way to put it, ends up saving so much time. So schedule management becomes the key. So everything's in my calendar, and if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist.
That's a good way to look at it. And I know last time we talked about technology and such, and whether or not some of these platforms are going to even be around in 6 months now that there's all this attention and we were in a bull market. I think it's kind of in a lull right now, it seems.
Bitcoin all-time high today.
No. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I keep reading articles about how the average price drops, and I know that could be because the number of artists selling has increased. But I also don't know what is me being down here in the depths with artists and stuff like that, and what the perception is to the real world and stuff. Because this is still a fairly small community, and when I talk to someone that's not of it, they're like, oh, what do you do exactly? What is this? People still don't know. So I can't get a good grasp as to what type of market it is then. To me, it looked like it slowed down, but you have a different opinion.
Well, yeah, so that's comparing month on month. Yeah. And, you're not going to get a $69 million sale every month, are you?
No.
So of course it's not going to be that high the following month. And that kind of money definitely skews the average price, right? So it's just a headline to grab attention, I think. There's so many more artists coming on board. Hopefully there's many more collectors coming on board. But having been through, 2 years of fluctuations in the price of Ethereum and influx of collectors and then a die down in collectors, month to month is not long enough to make any sort of judgment on where we sit.
That's interesting, because I don't have that perspective, and you obviously are sticking through it all and becoming one of those. How do I phrase this? You're just someone that I think people should be looking to for that wisdom and just security when things aren't coming as easy as they were back in February. People would just throw something up on OpenSea or Foundation, even Nifty Gateway, who was just printing money essentially. Now there is a drop in collectors, I think, because people that came in to make a quick buck are now having trouble flipping things, which in hindsight could potentially be a good thing for people that actually care about this stuff. But also, yeah, again, neither of us are good at balancing things, so who are we to find what that answer is?
Markets will be what markets will be, right? And for me, that has very little to do with the art. And I'm here for the art, not the market. As long as we're getting good artists interested in what the technology can do for them, then I think we're winning. Because ultimately, it's the artists who are creating this space with their art. And as long as the art is good and you have collectors who are interested in the art and not just another financial instrument, then we'll be okay. And the art world is certainly taking notice, right? Because artists are taking notice.
Artists are the art world, but also there's a relationship between them and the collector, though, too. And I didn't think about this until I spoke to Latabo. I'm going to mispronounce her last name because she didn't pronounce it for me, but I think it's Huma. It's Huma. She said collectors are people too, so you have to like kind of just mint 3 of your pieces and forget about it because you can't control the other human aspect of it. And I never thought of, since I'm not exactly an artist, I have creative tendencies, but I am not on your guys' level by any stretch of the imagination. I never thought about like collectors being human beings in this either. How do we keep those collectors interested and help bring them in? Because I know this is something Etta struggles with too, keeping them interested in this as well.
So for me, I think it's about the connection that collectors can have with the artists in the space that tends to be mitigated by galleries in the real art world, right? So artists in the real art world have a gallery representing them, and the collectors tend to deal with the gallery and not with the artist so much. Whereas if collectors in this space collecting an artist's work, they have direct access
Right.
to the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to them on Twitter. And I don't know an artist, in this space that won't respond to, someone who's collected their art. So I think it's about building relationships and giving people insight into the creative process that just hasn't been available before.
Yeah, you're right. That accessibility to artists like still just baffles me. That I hop in and I just send an email to you, to Etta, to whoever, and you guys are like, yeah, sure, we'll talk to you. And it's like, wait a second. Do you guys want to, vet me a little bit? Do you want to get a feel for me before you talk to me? And you guys are like, no, let's just do it. And like, that's what keeps me interested in all of this. And I love it. And like we've said, you and I have said before, it's that community that is being built between all of us that is really special. And I don't know that I've been a party to something like that, even like with any other like fad or hobby I've had. You're like side by side with other people that like the same stuff, but like this is each of us trying to help each other and promote each other in a way because it's a symbiotic relationship almost.
We are creating this thing together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it's felt, right? And I'm making art, but I'm also making this space what it is. As and all of the other artists are doing the same, carving out that space for ourselves. And I think that takes a particular kind of person, which might explain the accessibility, right? That they are the people who are willing to take risks, that are experimenters, that are, it's not every artist who will find this space appealing. And that's fine, right? Because they have a space and they can, be represented by their gallery. And that system, if that works, that's perfectly fine. This is, in my eyes, a system that can work for those that other system doesn't work for.
Do you think there still needs to be a type of middleman in that sense? Because, and I've had this conversation with other artists too, like it still seems to be randomized who is selling something, 5 pieces in a week, and who is still buried at the bottom, despite their talent being amazing and on the same level. Do you still think there's a need for, I'm not saying a gallery is the solution to it, but even just curators in general, people with an education in art that are saying, yes, this is good, that's also good, you guys should be looking at these artists as well too?
I mean, that's really difficult, right? Because no, I don't believe that there should be. And I feel very strongly about that. On the other hand, I see it as an inevitability to an art market in general and a marketplace in particular, that you will always have that disparity, right? And in fact, you will always have an increasing disparity, just like in real life, that the markets drive inequality in that respect. Would curators help? I mean, curators are wonderful at finding gems. So yes, that's useful. I'm not as certain that, they should promote artists, because that taints their
appeal, kind of, or their natural
impartiality, right?
Yeah,
I
right,
think
right,
to be
right.
a good curator, they need to be impartial.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's the other reason why I don't think that platforms should be performing that role either, unless they're going to do it for all of the artists on their platform and not just some. It's better that they not. Because then at least that's level.
And that's what I think hic et nunc is, or however you pronounce it. My Latin is non-existent. So, but that's what they're doing. And I do enjoy the digging and finding gems myself, because, if I like this, I get it, and that's it. But it's still,
Yeah. So, I mean, just think of a potential other solution, right? So instead of having galleries and curators who are finding these gems and putting them in front of people, it could be you, it could be anyone that comes across something, you love it, you tweet about it or you write about it, you make other people aware of it. And then people find the other people whose styles they like, or, oh, I remember, there were like 3 things that I saw in his, timeline that I really liked. So he has a similar taste to me. So I'm going to follow him on Twitter, and the next time he finds something, it'll likely be something I like. And then everybody gets the filters that they choose, not the filters that are chosen.
right. And unfortunately, Twitter still plays a role in choosing what tweets you see from who and such. So we still haven't even broken through that filter. What's your background in technology? I know you brought it up last time. And if I'm being honest, you completely, like, my self-conscious, I'm talking to someone who is much more knowledgeable than me, like, completely came out, and it just, I doubt you noticed it, because it's just one of those things we don't notice in conversations. But I was just like so caught off guard. I was just nodding and just saying, okay, hopefully she doesn't know I'm a complete and utter fraud at this point. What is your background in technology?
So sorry, I've been a software engineer for nearly 25 years. It'll be 25 years next year. Started off in distributed computing. So distributed file systems was one of the first projects that I worked on, and then went on to was called distributed computing environment. Just it, it's the same model, just done in different ways to every distributed, decentralized model that people can think of. And then I moved into transaction processing, and have worked for the last 20 years now in mainframe transaction processing.
So you have that background. How long have you been doing art?
All my life.
On top of that, all your life. Okay.
All my life. But for most of that, while working full time and raising a family, the art was done when I had time. Right. So, when I could carve out some time to do some painting, I did. It wasn't until about 5 years ago that my daughter's grown up, she's 25, that I decided to really take my art seriously. It was time that, if I was going to do this, it mattered to me. So I was actually going to live and act as if it mattered. And that really made all the difference, because it meant that I could prioritize it in my own life. And that simple just change in mindset seemed to make the universe reprioritize everything.
Yeah, that's that's always interesting to me. Like, it's such a simple concept that, I just made it important to me, and then it became important. There's a show that I used to watch. Well, I still watch. It's one of my favorite shows. It's called How I Met Your Mother, and there's a simple line in there, like, what's your craziest dream that you want to do? And this woman says, end world hunger. And the guy says, well, then everything you do, every decision you make should be based on that. And as long as you're doing that, you can't go wrong. Because along the way, you find these things that it just, all of a sudden, everything just starts connecting to each other. And it seems like everything is purposeful.
There's a word for that, I discovered.
There is.
Through this process, there's a word for that. And
there's a process that helped you discover the word.
Yeah, actually, there was. It's pronoia. So instead of, the world is out to get you, like paranoia, pronoia, the world is conspiring to help you achieve what you want to achieve.
That's interesting.
The world's conspiring to help you.
That's interesting. Because in a way, your art and your background in technology have kind of coincided with each other into this almost like perfect union where you are using, it's called GAN, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And you are making these incredible things that I don't even care if my interpretation of them was wrong or if it was what you intended with what I wrote, because that's what I saw. And to me, it was so like blatantly clear what you were trying to do. But that process isn't that simple, that like what you put in is what you get out. Because I've spoken to another guy who does it as well. And he's taken criticism from people in other art communities saying like, oh, you're using a computer, this isn't real art and such. And if people knew how hard that process is and how long it takes sometimes just to get an image that you like, there would be no question as to whether or not it's art, because it is a time-consuming process.
Yeah, so I'm hesitant to equate time with quality. But he's right. It takes an enormous amount of time. For me, it's a process and has always been because I'm fascinated by the unexpected results, right? They're the things that I then dig deeper into, right? So, you put a load of images in and you see what then comes out. And if there's something interesting, that's the direction to go further in. And it's almost like a conversation of reply response back and forth iteratively over and over and over again. So that's the time consuming bit. It takes a long time to generate, but then you're not doing that just once, you're doing it over and over again. And each time it shifts and you can influence that shift. And that's where the art, I think, really comes into it. There's art in writing code. That's a creative process. But every artist, even in physical media, right, does this process of selection. Everything that you make is not going in a gallery, right? So you have to have some discernment and some curation of your own work. And so for me, doing the GAN stuff, it's about directing that process, and it's about that process of curation. So I'm guiding the next images that come out.
You also create on data.art, and that conversation piece also relates as well, not only with the technology and you curating the pieces that are coming, the images that are coming in and out, but also on data where it's you're putting up a piece and then someone is responding to it and then flowing into their own piece as well.
And it is a true conversation. Yeah. All of that. And so I'll give you a alpha leak. So the project that I'm currently putting together for Async art, because the thing that really excited me, and I did a whole presentation on it at the virtual Rare Arts Fest last year. The whole really exciting part, apart from the fact that it's doing something with blockchain, native, really with the tokens that no other platform has done, right? It's actually using the technology in an interesting, novel way. But for me, what an async art piece does is it makes the collector also a collaborator, right? It brings them into the conversation of the artwork. So my next individual async art piece is going to be the figures that I've been generating. So there's new figures, some backgrounds that I've been generating. So there's going to be 2 figures representing 2 collectors. And then there's going to be an artwork on the wall, which again is another series of generated images that I've been working on. So it's all generated. And I'm training I'm about to start, just been getting the data set together, a text generator, an AI text generator. And I'm going to feed it the quotes that I've collected of throughout the history of people saying, "What is art?" Generate quotes, and they're going to be a token layer, right, that can be bought on Async. And so the 2 collectors can have a conversation between each other about the artwork and with me as the artist.
When I said that I felt almost dwarfed by your intelligence before. This is another one of those moments where what you are coming up with is, I used to call it, there are books. I'm an English teacher, which is why I got into writing for this writers group, because that's always my creative outlet. There are books where what is being written is so human and to the core of a thought and idea that I can't explain it beyond calling it tickling your brainstem, because it's so deep and inherent to something human that we all experience, that there's nothing beneath it. That is at our core. And that's kind of the same mindset that I'm feeling now when you're describing what you are. It's like there's what you're doing is so, the simple way to describe it is so meta, but that cheapens what you're doing, because if art is,
it's embodying.
Yeah, it's embodying.
The actual connections in a visual way and an interactive way.
Right, because
you couldn't do that with just a static image.
You're right.
It has to be async.
Mm-hmm. You're right, because artists will always say, I have my ideas to like what my art says, and then you give it to collectors and people who appreciate art, and the conversation around it is what kind of forms what the art piece becomes then. But you are doing that in an actual piece where it is generative and changing, where whatever it becomes, no one has control over it, but it's finally all of us influencing it in real time.
So that's the key, is you're bringing that social interaction aspect into it. And I don't think that has really been explored fully yet. But just like the interaction with the machine in GAN, right? If you want to think of it in that way, just like that interaction, I want to be surprised. I want to see what people, the token holders are going to change their layers to, what they're going to say in response to me changing the layer that has the artwork on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is. And this also goes back to pronoia, where everything, the universe is conspiring for you. You always are talking about community, conversations, interactions with people. I think the thread is very easy to find when talking to you. And I think, to me, like, I could put you on like a corkboard and start to get like yarn and stuff like that to tell a story about you. Like, the threads are very clear to me. It's all about human connection, despite the fact that it is digital and sometimes cold and impersonal in a way, where, social media and computers, we're spending more time on screens and such and not having face-to-face conversations. Now we're in the middle of a pandemic and such. It's always with you about that human aspect to it. And do you think, is that something you're going for? Because that is like blatantly clear to me.
I don't know. So I think about, I like being alone. I'm not going out all the time. I don't have a very large circle of friends in real life. I am very much, I keep to myself. And I'm happy just on my own. So perhaps, the way that I satisfy the innate human need for connection is through art.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, art therapy is a very real thing because it's an expression of something that's inside of us. Like you are putting yourself out there in some ways. And maybe that's why people feel the need for galleries, because you're exposing a portion of yourself, whether you realize it consciously or not. It is putting yourself out there and opening yourself up to people possibly rejecting something you have to say, which kind of relates to why you had the idea for Women of Crypto Art. And also still fascinates me that as someone who likes to be alone is now bringing people together digitally to interact with each other and working day and night to keep it going and growing it more and more every day. It's just you're not just exploring it possibly in your art, you're exploring it still in your life and this project that's outside of you in other ways too. It's interesting to me.
I mean, so the Invisible Economy is another project that is all about building that community of artists. And so I mean, there are a couple different ways. And I mean, the crypto art community in general, right, has always been something I valued, and wanted to try and protect isn't the right word, but nurture maybe. But again, it's something that is perhaps a surrogate for real life. I certainly couldn't do what I do online in real life, because just being around that many people would completely, wear me out.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It is completely exhausting. So I don't know. I guess that is my balance. I don't do that in real life. And so then I have the energy to do it virtually with groups of people online.
So you do have a knack for balancing things out. That's also interesting to me because I find being online exhausting, because to me it feels like everything is coming at me at once and I have no filters. But in person, there's only so many people you can interact with at one time. So it's very, to me, that's easier to me. And I've never thought about like being online as a way of controlling or not. I've never seen it from your point of view as to, I've always just looked at it as like people that are shy and not outgoing and don't know how to converse, which isn't the case with you at all, because obviously you and I could talk all day about this stuff. So it's just, I've never thought of that as, oh.
So I guess in some ways, I guess I was your prototypical geek back in the, early 90s, mid 90s, right? Playing online moves and muds and, all text based, right? But with loads of people. And, you never saw them, but you could interact with them every day. And so that in a lot of ways just feels natural.
So all of this nonsense about spending too much time on computers and stuff, it's really not a new thing. It's there's always that thing where generations always seem to hate the up and coming generation. Like with millennials, we despise Generation Z. Gen X hates millennials, and so on and so on. And baby boomers hate everyone. But throughout history, there is quotes that go all the way back to Plato and Socrates, where they're saying like, oh, this up and coming generation is uneducated, they are lazy, they don't want to work, then this, and this. And none of us sit back to find the time and wait. No, everyone's been saying the same thing for 100 years. And like you've been doing the same thing. So does this feel different this time, I guess, is where I'm going with all of this. Does this new platform with NFTs, it's new to me, but you've been doing it for 2 years. Does it feel like a dynamic shift, really, I guess, as a lot of people?
So, and at the beginning, it really felt like the beginning of Web 1.0, right? So, I remember building my first GeoCities site, right? and it kind of felt like that last year, year before, right? Where you're there and you're just thinking about all of the different possibilities that are, now available to you. And it is this sort of creative primordial soup, right? Where you just have all of the ingredients and they're all sloshing around, and then all of a sudden something emerges. And there was this huge explosion after the first websites, and people got online and started doing really interesting, cool things. And so blockchain and the NFT space particularly felt like that, where there was this mix of ingredients that was there and people were trying interesting things. When everything moved online, I think that escalated, and there were lots and lots and lots more experiments, both failed and successful. Yeah. This year so far has felt like we've got sort of stuck in a groove, and things are just, all we're seeing as new is just repeats of what has already been done.
And right now I'm seeing a lot of plays on CryptoPunks, where it is Picasso CryptoPunks, it is 3D CryptoPunks. It's
yes, and so that happens because that's what the market produces. The market, those things that float to the top get copied, they get emulated by people who also want to be at the top. So it becomes very difficult to differentiate, or going back to how we started the conversation, it gets very difficult to find the real, authentic, I'm doing this because this is me, versus I'm doing this because I've seen 10 of these sell for really high prices, so that's what I'm going to do, right? And resisting that draw of, I could make 10 ETH by doing this, is too much for a lot of people.
Yeah, agreed.
And a lot of people, need that to put food on the table or pay their rent or whatever. So fair dues, that's what the market does. And if that's how you're paying your bills, then that's how you're paying your bills. But I think that we need to reset the expectation that the market is going to produce excellence, because the market tends towards more of the same, not excellence.
I think that might be what is occurring now, though, and this goes back to the platforms and such like Nifty Gateway, where a month ago open editions were going between 200 to 500, and now you see a drop off and they're back to like 100. So it almost seems like hopefully this new group of people, and I'm included in that, are starting to realize that, like anything else, you have to be careful and discern what is actually good and what is valuable, because it's not just, oh, CryptoPunk sold sold. There's my English degree being put to great use right there. um, CryptoPunk sold really well, I'm gonna do that. um, Now it's people are reading up on art history. I am having conversations with one of my wife's college friends every day who has an art degree, and I'm learning things from him. It's it's almost like the market is correcting, but it's correcting in the form of people want to become more educated, and I don't know that that's a bad thing. In a way, it's almost like that hierarchy, that disparity that you were talking about, is almost needed for people to grow. And this is not me saying that we should not tax billionaires, through the teeth, because we absolutely should. But that disparity brings awareness to like what is actually needed and what is valuable in this space.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, we're still early. We're still really early, right? That's the other thing, is even though it has been going on for years, it is now at a stage where it's almost just starting. So, that awareness that has come in, and, the headlines in all of the newspapers and segments on the BBC and everything else, right? This is just starting.
It feels like it's been going on forever. And I always say, and when I talk to Angie Taylor, this is going to be one of my points to her, because she is, if we were the same age and lived in the same town and went to the same high school, we would have been running in the same groups, except I am the watered down version of her. She is punk, where I am pop punk. And if I come to a scene, it usually means it's about to go big and mainstream, because I'm late to the game with everything, it seems. But so, like, maybe you're right. Maybe this is still new, but in a few months, it's probably going to be really big because I heard about it. So it, but it does feel like it's been going on forever, and it feels like, I don't know. How do you keep your energy level up, I guess? Because I guess that's why it's starting to feel not old, but the newness has worn off for me, for sure.
Draining. It can be. It can be draining. So I don't know how helpful this will be, but
I love that preface.
working and doing the working group sense making sessions for the invisible economy is the thing that gives me energy. I was just saying this yesterday because we had a call with a reporter, actually. And even just in that session, there were only like 4 of us and the reporter. And even in that session, it went on for like an hour and a half nearly. By the end of that call, I was completely refreshed. Whereas the meeting started just as I was finishing work. And I can remember, it was like 3:00 and I was feeling so tired, and I was like, oh, I wish I could take a nap. And, but I finished work 5:00, had this meeting. So when I went into the meeting, just really low energy, felt like I'm going to go to bed at 8:00 tonight because I'm so tired. Hour and a half later, I've got all the energy in the world. And there's just something about the synergy in those meetings. There's something about the thing that we're creating together and its importance. And It's definitely a motivating factor. And it's definitely a key thing that gives me energy to do everything else.
No, that is helpful. I just got my second vaccine shot over the weekend, and it knocked me out Sunday and yesterday. I had to cancel a phone call yesterday, and I woke up this morning. I was like, how am I going to hold my own with you? Like, again, it's that fear. I know I'm talking to someone who's intelligent. How am I going to, like, she's just going to dance circles around me. She's just going to hang up on me. Just be like, all right, see you, Joe. But talking to you and talking about this stuff and writing about art, writing about just things that matter and having other people listen to it, other people talk about it or read it is, you're right, it's revitalizing. It makes it all worth it. And it all comes back to what you say is the lasting thing that is going to withstand everything is the communities that we build here.
Yes, because everything else will change. And I do truly believe that, that the core people who were here at the beginning, and are still here, are going to be here. And everything else can change around them, right? The technology can change, the style can change, the regulations can change, the platforms can change. Everything in the world can change. But we deal with that as a group, and we deal with that because of the bonds that we've created through the last few years. And everything else is going to be, whatever it is that we create. It isn't the technology. Yeah, that's cool. It's a delivery mechanism. You can do interesting things with it. But it's the artists and the collectors and the engineers, the platform, designers and the smart contract writers, the techie people who are creative too, right? They're artists in their own way. And that mix of people going through doing cool, innovative stuff, no matter what they turn to, it's going to be interesting. And I think that's what keeps the cohesion.
I'd like to thank my guests for taking the time to speak with me. I'd also like to thank the DJ, Aiden, for allowing me to use his music. And if you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe, like, and share it. Thanks for listening.